Hey everyone, this is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row. Thanks so much for listening to the following broadcast, courtesy of Public House Media.
This is Rachel Mullins, host of #NoFilterFriday here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my new show, #NoFilterFriday, where we talk about all of the sexual misconduct allegations swirling around Hollywood. A new show drops every Friday at 8:30 Pacific Standard Time. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of #NoFilterFriday. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome to How to Write Good. I'm your host, Daniel Poppie. Find out more about me at danielpoppie.com. Poppie is spelled Poppie or something like that. Daniel is, if you're an adult, if you speak English as a first language, I'm not talking to someone who doesn't know English. I'm talking to people who do. If you speak English as a first language and you don't know Daniel, you need to figure out how to spell it because it's like the top 5 in names. Okay? Just figure it out. Just make it your job this week. That is your homework. I'm giving you homework to find out how to spell Daniel if you don't. Because you should know it, because there's going to be a lot of people named Daniel in your life if you're in the English-speaking world. Like I said, like top 5 in baby names. I am having a hard time talking this week. I started recording this. This isn't live. You already know it's not live, okay? Give me a break, people. This isn't live. And I have a little bit of a cold. And my nose is, like, you're like, it's producing mucus. And it's stopping me from forming specific sounds, and it's making it harder to say specific syllables and words. So if you hear something, or if I sound funky, it might be the case that I'm a little sick and I just can't talk right now. That happens when I'm sick. As always, check out the website. There's not a lot going on the website right now. One of the biggest reasons I have the website is that I'm working on a book. I will be announcing when I plan to have it out. I'm still working. It's at the very, very end stages of becoming published. Let's just say that. And I'll tell everyone when it becomes published and when it's out there, or I'll give you some notice when to expect it. But right now, I don't have an exact date, but there will be an exact date at some point. But so that's why I have it. And if there's not a lot, I'm really bad with social media. I've just decided I'm really bad with social media. I wish that somebody would just run social media for me. I'm really bad at posting things. I'm really bad at remembering to post things. I think the reason why I'm really bad at social media is because I don't value it very much. I lived without social media for a really long time, for years. Like, I had a Facebook way back in sometime in college, I think, and I got rid of this Facebook, and my life, it was just better because I didn't have to see people's stuff. I didn't have to see what people say. And coming back to Facebook, I kind of think of it as a joke because it's just a bizarre situation. Facebook is really weird if you think about it, because it's essentially like everyone has a stage or a megaphone. Think about everyone having a megaphone, and everyone's able to hear everyone with that megaphone. There's algorithms, I know, on Facebook, but this is the general idea. Like, everyone's able to hear everyone else, but at the same time they have their own megaphone. So I think, there's studies that show that you feel more isolated. I believe there are, okay? This is a statement of opinion. I believe there are studies that show that you feel more isolated when you're on Facebook, and it would make a lot of sense, because if you're typing something on Facebook, you want somebody to react to that, right? It would make sense if you're like, oh, I've got this idea, I've got this thing I want to say, I want to have a discussion with someone about this idea, so I type it up on Facebook, I put it out there. Well, it doesn't mean that anyone's interested in what you have to say. Like, think about this podcast for a second. Just because I put this podcast out doesn't mean it means anyone's interested in what I have to say. There are some people who have shown interest. You can, if there's 0 listens or whatever, if there's 0 listens on this podcast, I can see, oh yeah, like, these people have an interest in what I have to say. But if there's no listens, I can see, oh, maybe I should do something else. But it also takes a while to get a podcast going as well. But Facebook, like, I think if you put something out there and everybody think about it this way. If everyone has a megaphone and they're trying to get their point across to everyone else, you don't really react to someone if you're trying to get to your own point across. If someone types something out on Facebook and they put it out there, and there's 100 other people typing something out on Facebook and putting it out there, there's going to be a very small amount of people who get a lot of reactions from people. I know some of those people. They get like 40 likes and different things like that. So it's weird to me, and I kind of think of it as a joke. I think of Facebook as a joke. So if you see me on Facebook and I post something, or if there's something posted on How to Write Good's page, it may be a joke. It may not be a joke. I'm going to try to keep sarcasm to a minimum on that page because, I don't know, because not everybody knows me personally, and I think everyone has the right to not have to figure out whether I'm being sarcastic or not. So if you, as I always say, if you like How to Write Good, please like and share the posts that go up. Like How to Write Good on Facebook if you haven't already. That'd be awesome. If you do not like How to Write Good, and if you do like How to Write, everybody should just go on iTunes, go to How to Write Good's page, give it 5 stars. Give the page 5 stars on Facebook. Give it 5 stars on Spreaker or whatever podcasting app you do. That's whether you like it or not, because, why not? If you, besides that, okay, like I said, I've got my nose, like, you need your nose to talk. I need my nose. I must be pretty nasally when I talk because I need my nose to say things. Certain languages don't need it as much because they're not as nasally. Check out Public House Media. Public House Media brings you How to Write Good. It helps it happen. How to Write Good would not be happening without Public House Media. It's a smaller company that puts out media. Check them out. Check out their other podcasts, because if you don't like How to Write Good, then you probably will like another podcast by Public House Media. Gosh, I'm taking up a lot of time. I've only got 30 minutes. I always go over. I need to rein myself in. Quick announcement. I do have the first guest for How to Write Good. The first guest will be, I've got a quick check because I forgot to prep myself with this. But the first guest will be in 2 weeks. So on the 31st, I will have the first guest. Like I said, it will be the end of each month. There will be a guest. And maybe I'll up that if I'm able to. It's just a matter of getting people to guest and getting people who are interesting, who I think would be interesting to talk to. So I'll tell you more about who will be guesting and kind of prep that so I don't have to do as much the day of. We're going to jump into our word of the week because we need to learn more vocabulary, because our vocabulary is slowly shrinking and we need some word. It may not be the case that our vocabulary is slowly shrinking, but in the modern age, we've got words like sposh, and I'm disseminating these words. I don't know why I made that a word of the week. I'm eternally regretful. I pray for your forgiveness that I made sposh a word of the week, because sposh is one of those words. So there are specific words that if somebody coins a term, and the word is great because they actually have a knowledge of the language, and they're like, oh, this is perfect. We need a term like this. We need something that means this, and we don't have a term for it yet, so we'll use this word that I made up that's using the language that's already there. There's other terms, there's other words that come about because of it just develops naturally. The language evolves and words develop naturally. Whether words split apart or whatever, or whether they cram together or whatever happens. Sposh is one of those words that it just seems like no thought was put into it. So one day someone's like, oh, we don't have a word for this type of snow or slush or whatever. And somebody's like, well, we could call it sposh. And I'm not a fan of just making up a word without any thought put into it. I need a word you need a robust word. You need a word that just really fits what it's talking about. And sposh, in my opinion, either fits it too well or doesn't fit it because I don't like it. So I'm sorry about that. I shouldn't have brought that up. I shouldn't have had it as word of the week. So word of the week this week, as we've been doing, and since it's still pretty cold, it's getting warmer here up north if you're down south or if you're in a warm area. It's getting warmer here. It's 20 degrees today. It's wonderful. It's been like in the negative, so it's a lot better when it's warmer. Hibernaculum, and all hibernaculum means is winter quarters. Okay, so this is typically associated with animals too, and it's like a bear's den. It's where they go to sleep. So winter quarters is the hibernaculum of an animal. All right, we're going to jump into our accidental essence. And the reason why is because I've already wasted, maybe it's not a waste. I've already taken up 9 minutes and 30 seconds because I talk about random things. And I usually go late. So I'd rather just have time to talk about stuff at the end if I have time than go late. Because I want to keep it in that 30-minute time frame because you people are busy. Okay? So I'm going to be talking about storytelling and music. And you may think that's a very big topic, but I'm actually going to be talking about why I think within the family of art, I see storytelling and music as twins. All right, and I'll be explaining that. But more so. Okay, so I say storytelling. I mean like writing in general, any type of art that would be a type of written art, and but I like storytelling. I like to focus on that, and storytelling does the same thing, and I could talk about them in the same way. But storytelling is usually done through the word, and writing is done through the word. And with storytelling, it can take like written form. It can be in movies. It can be in video games. It can be spoken. I could have a podcast where there are podcasts that are story podcasts, and there's radio shows. In the past, there were radio shows that told stories. So I say storytelling and not writing itself because writing is an avenue through which you tell a story. Okay? So with modern art, one frustration I have, whether it's ceramics, whether it's sculpture, whether it's painting, whether it's making a building, one frustration is that if you make a piece of art, that is the piece of art, and it doesn't exist in any other form. It has a finite, it's limited. It has a finite, it's a finite thing. It's limited by the object that is the art piece. Okay? And someone may say, well, why does it matter? Like, I can get a print. So let's just talk about paintings for a bit. So someone might say that, what does it matter? So I like paintings, and I'm a little frustrated with paintings because paintings are really, really expensive. And even if you get someone who's more of a minor artist, they're really expensive, super expensive. And I think one of the reasons why they're expensive is because that's the only piece of art. And I like paintings because I like photographs. But with photographs, I don't know. Paintings and photographs are of a different quality. Okay, I like paintings because the colors are a little different. Photographs kind of capture everything as it is exactly. I know you can have Photoshop. We're not talking about that. I say get a painting if you're going to have something photoshopped. But photographs capture something, and paintings are filtered through the mind of the artist. So I like paintings, and I wish that I could put paintings up in a lot of places around my house, but they're just so stinking expensive. Now, like I said, oh, well, you could get a print. Prints are pretty cheap. Prints are still pretty expensive, by the way. Prints are pretty cheap. Why don't you get a print? Now, if you get a print of a painting, it's not the same thing as the painting. For instance, I'm having like I said at the beginning of the podcast, I feel like I'm getting a little sick. My nose is hard to talk, and it's slowing me down as I talk, and it's kind of getting me frustrated. So we'll see how this goes. So I was talking about prints. Okay. When you have ever seen a Monet in person, when you are up by a Monet, first of all, a lot of there's certain Monets that are small. Okay. Somebody's going to be like, well, I've seen a Monet that's like the size of a regular picture. Certain Monets are small. A lot of Monets are really big. All right. If you go to Chicago and you go to the Art Institute in Chicago, which has a lot of paintings, it has a lot of Monets, and you see some Monets, you're going to see a lot of really, really big pieces of artwork. Now, if you stand right in front of a Monet, they don't look really impressive. The only time Monets start to look impressive is when you stand about 15 feet away from a Monet. Okay, and then you suddenly are like, whoa, like this is really cool because the lighting in Monets are perfect. Okay, they're not perfect, but I'm just using the term. All right. Now they're really, really big. How you could respond to that? Oh, well, you could just get a really big print of a Monet. Well, I could get a really big print of a Monet, but if you aren't someone who has seen that Monet in person, you don't know the exact size it was created. Okay, for instance, there's a lot of Vincent van Gogh paintings, and you expect these paintings to be bigger, but they're the size of a picture. okay? And you expect him to be a big wall painting like a Monet. I'm talking about Vincent van Gogh's now. But if you don't see the if you don't see the painting in person, you don't know how big it's supposed to be. And that's why I think that it's not the same thing. You have to actually go see that painting and be like, okay, then I have to get a print this exact size. In other cases, there's this artist. He makes really cool paintings. His name's Chuck Close. He's in a wheelchair. He makes these really cool paintings, and he makes a lot of, and they're like portraits. Some of them are hyper realistic. Some of them are made with they are what would you describe it? They're like colors. They're little spots of color that may come into this portrait. Now, if you had a print of a Chuck Close painting, that's cool. But Chuck Close's paintings are probably 10 feet wide and 15 feet high. And having a print is a little different than the actual painting. The experience of seeing that painting is a bit different than if you actually... the experience of seeing the painting is a bit different than if you just saw it as a print. So some people would say, well, print is good enough for me, but I actually want real paintings, and it's frustrating to me because I can't have that actual piece of art. And I think that experiencing that actual piece of art is a bit different than just getting a print or just getting a copy of it. It's just not the same. There's a different quality to it, a different quality to your life when you can see an actual painting or see an actual sculpture. It's like David. So if you go and see David, and David's in Florence, Michelangelo's David. If you go see David in Florence, it's a bit, you don't realize how big he is. He's not monstrous, but he's bigger than a life size. He's a lot bigger. You don't see how big he is, and it's just a different experience. Now, if you go see David in Florence, I think he's in Florence, there's a lot of tourists, unfortunately. I mean, it'd be nice to just see something and just watch it, look at it for a bit. People take pictures. I don't really get taking pictures of artwork because I can just look it up online and get a better picture. I should just go get a better picture of that than taking it by myself. I think that if you see a piece of art, don't take a picture of it. Just look at it. Take your time, look at it, study it, I guess, and just see the workmanship that went into it. Okay, so now that I've got off track, or maybe I've actually been talking about something, now that I've gotten off track, I'm going to go back to writing and music. So that's just traditional art. And like I said, traditional art is confined to an object. Writing and music are different. And you've probably, if you've been thinking about this, you've probably caught on to what I'm about to talk about. When you create a story, and again, I said writing, I mean storytelling. When you create a story or anything written, or if you create music, you can reproduce it indefinitely. So the reason why you can do this is because it's not about the letters on the page. It's about the words and the ideas conveyed in that writing. And because the actual physical aesthetic of written word, there are these manuscripts in the medieval times called illuminated manuscripts, and they were artistic pieces. They're essentially books with all this artwork in them, but it also had the Bible written in it as well. It was a lot of Irish monks creating these things. But typically, it's the case that you write something down, and the most important part about that are the words that are used, but I can keep on printing those words over and over again, and it doesn't change the actual artwork, because as long as that person can understand those words and they are affected by that art piece in the same exact way as someone who saw it written on a piece of paper. So if I have those words and I write them down, it's the same or almost the exact same as if I speak them, or if I write them down if I have a poem that I wrote and I hand write it, it's going to be the exact same feeling as if I printed it off, or as if I did it in calligraphy. It's going to have that exact same meaning. It's going to be the same piece of art. And it's the same thing with music. It doesn't matter if it's being recorded, it doesn't matter if it's live, it doesn't matter if it's on a CD or a vinyl record, it doesn't matter if it's on a cassette tape. It's still the same piece of art. Now, some would contend, my nose is getting in my way right now, that's why I kind of slowed down. Some would contend that other forms of art that are more traditional fall into this. Some would say, oh, well, what about molds? What about prints? Okay? What about photographs? Now, first of all, I'm not I'm not trying to say this to mean photography, okay? But by my definition of art, I don't think that photographs, I'm not sure yet, I still have to do some thinking about this, but I'm not sure that I would classify photography as art. And the reason why is that I think art is something that you create. It's something that you create that is a window or a lens into the world to help you understand the world better. That's how I define art. Now, I'm going to probably have an episode about photography and what I think and why I think this. I do believe that photography takes a lot of skill, but you're not creating anything, okay? You're just capturing the world. Okay, maybe, but I've got to think about it. I'm not sure about it. I'm not trying to demean someone who does photography. I certainly couldn't. I'd have to do a lot of training to get to the point of someone doing something professional, and I still probably wouldn't be there. But I'm not sure about that. Now, prints and molds, I think those are more of like the exception to the rule than the actual rule. I think traditional art typically is something that you can't reproduce over and over again. And then again, like the value of prints and molds is a lot less than regular art pieces. It's a lot less than a sculpture that somebody took the time to make specifically. And with prints and molds, like with paintings, I can make a print of a painting and I can look like the painting, but it's not the painting. It's not the same thing. So like I said, I was even talking about prints when I was talking about paintings. So yeah, there's a certain amount of art that goes into it, but it's not as valuable. So I don't think it's as valuable. All right. Besides the few exceptions, this visual, tangible art can't be reproduced in the same way as storytelling and music. Okay, so why is it the case that we can reproduce, and why is it the same value? If I write down a story and I print that story off thousands of times, why is it just as valuable as the time I wrote it down before? And I want to talk about that a little bit before I jump into the last part. So with traditional art, that's what I'm using for paintings and stuff like that. That's the term. It requires something tangible to be a conduit through what the artist means to convey. Okay, it has to have that tangible thing. That if you think of it, so in Christianity, they have this idea that humans are physical and spiritual. Okay, they also have this idea that Christ is fully God and fully man. So think of it this way. So Christians believe that Christ is fully God and fully man. They believe that it has to be the case that he is both. Like, it's not just he's half or one or the other, or he's a God embodying a human in some way, but he's not actually a human. They believe he's actually fully God, he's actually fully man. Think of art in that same way. It's kind of interesting, actually. I just thought of this. I didn't actually come up with this before. But art is the same way. Art is an idea, but it's held inside of something physical. Like these traditional forms are ideas held inside of something physical. The art cannot exist if that physical thing does not exist. All right? Because I think there are ideas, I think there's emotions, I think there's different things that go into this art. Humans, I guess, I don't know, I think that maybe humans embody this art with themselves. They take this object, they take this material, they use it in some way, they shape it into something, and they in some form embody it. They make it into a human thing. But writing and music, because they're not physically bound, they convey pure abstraction. All right, they convey ideas and emotions and things that connect people on either an intellectual, which is more along the storytelling line, or an emotional, and emotional is more connected to the musical side of things. So it's either more intellectual or more emotional, and both those emotions and intellect are intangible things. You can't touch intellect. You can see the effects of intellect, but you can't touch intellect. You can't feel intellect. You can't grab intellect. And some people may say, well, I can grab a brain, but you're not. You're grabbing, at the very least, or at the very most, you're grabbing a vehicle of intellect. You're not seeing someone think, okay? If someone's like, well, I can look at brain scans, you're not seeing someone think. Because you could... Okay, here's why I say you're not seeing someone think. You could produce the same exact neural responses. Let's just say there's a pattern. So we see these patterns on a brain, all right? And we say, well, I'm seeing this person think because I see these neural response patterns. I see these chemicals flowing through the brain. I'm seeing the synapses fire in a specific way. Therefore, I'm seeing someone thinking. Now, I could take a brain that's disembodied. So I've cut open a head, and I've taken the brain out, and I send the same exact electrical currents, I fire the same exact synapses, and I see the same exact activity in the brain, but there's no thinking going on, right? Because I think thinking is something that is abstract. It's even if you need the brain to do it, even if the brain is the vehicle by which thinking happens, but thinking happens in the abstract. It happens in an area that is not physical. Okay, it happens in a space that's not physical. Even if you think that thinking is going on in your head, even if you need that brain for it to function, it's happening outside of the physical realm in a way, I guess. And it's the same thing with storytelling and writing. So think of, you have these physical objects, this traditional art that needs that. It needs that tangible, that physical object to actually have that art. But words and music and writing, or music and storytelling, words are already an abstraction. They're just symbols that mean something to us, okay? They're already an abstraction of the world. If I say the word cup isn't a cup. The word cup isn't even attached to a cup. There isn't this innate inside of each cup there's this word cup. That's not the case. We just assign the word cup to it, and we know it means cup. In a way, a cup is an abstraction that became a reality, actually. But that's a totally different podcast. Okay. I'm having some trouble tonight. I'm really sorry if this podcast isn't going as well. I'm just getting really distracted with my nose. My gosh. Okay, so words are already abstraction. Music is connected to specific emotions and feelings. So they're both conveyed through noise. Words are conveyed through noise. Noise isn't an abstraction. Noise is actually physical sound waves moving through space. That's why if you get a speaker and you turn up the bass really loud, you can feel it because it's actually physical. But the meaning behind the words are actual. That's abstract. The emotion, the feelings, the words within the music is abstract too. These things are abstract as well. Now, I think all art is understood in an abstract way. All art isn't understood in the physical, and the reason why all art isn't understood in the physical is because the human element of the human, so the thinking, speaking, talking, the emotions they're something that isn't physical, okay? And that's the human side of humanity. The physical part of humanity isn't the human side of humanity. The thing that like makes a human is that what somebody would call a spiritual side of humanity, the aspect that you don't see. Okay? You see it, you see the effects of it, you see people talking, but you don't see it in the same way, okay? It's not something you can reach out and touch. You can't reach out and grab music, you can't reach out and grab words. But another thing, and this is the last aspect, and we're going to jump into the logical fallacy of the week because I'm already over time. I think I'm going slower than I usually do. I may be getting a sore throat. Another thing that connects music and storytelling is that if you alter a story or a song, it remains the same thing. There's a lot of variation you can do. Now, if you alter a painting, if you take a painting and you want to reproduce that painting, but you alter something in the painting, first of all, because you reproduced it, it's not the same painting. But let's just say it is the same painting. Well, if you alter it, it changes the painting, right? Now, with a story, with a song, and you see this with songs a lot. You see this, it's a lot more evident with songs because when you listen to a song, you can do covers. And people do covers upon cover of a song. You only need to see some classic rock songs and you realize, oh my gosh, there's a lot of covers, there's a lot of arrangements. So that's pretty easy to see. And the song remains the same because that basic core, the melody and the other things that go along with it, the bridge and whatever else, I can't remember the other word I was thinking of. All those things remain the same. Well, the way it's done, the way it's presented, the genre, for instance. So if you take Amazing Grace and you make it country, it's still Amazing Grace. It's just in a country fashion. Or if you make it punk, that'd be kind of amazing. If you take I think that's been done. I think Dropkick Murphys did that actually. Well, they're more like Irish punk. They're not straight up punk. Irish punk and like 70s punk are completely different animals. They're related to each other because Irish punk is like the child, or the cousin, the child, I guess, of like 70s punk. But 70s punk singing Amazing Grace, like 70s punk is a lot different because it's just a different ethos. And I think it's a lot purer in terms of why they did it, because there were a lot of kids, they're usually lower class, and it started in England, and they were just rebelling. And in some sense, like, there's a poetry to the fact that they were rebelling, and the fact that they didn't care what they did and how they did, and they were just going against the grain of everything else and just doing their own thing. And the reason why Irish punk, now if there's an Irish band in the 70s that did punk, they're just straight up punk, they're not Irish punk. But in a more modern sense, Irish punk is like, oh well, there were these people doing it. Okay, the reason why punk is dead, I'll go back to Irish punk. The reason why punk is dead is because punk was rebellion. Punk was, like, in my opinion, punk was created because it was a rebellion by the youth. And those youth are already grown up. So if you're creating punk nowadays, you're the man. First of all, if you're an original, so if you are and you are a punk, and you grow up and you continue to be a punk, now at some point you just become like a dad. And you're the authority figure. So you're the antithesis of what you were actually going against as a kid, as a punk. And if you're someone else who is younger, those people who were punks are gone now. So and the thing about it is, it's become a musical genre instead of kind of a movement, I guess. And I think it was more of a movement. I think it's just had its day. And if you want to create something like punk nowadays, you just have to do something completely different, because it was doing something completely new. It was going against all these, like, if you think about like the 70s and the 60s, the Beach Boys were very a lot more feminine than punk, and punk was like the exact opposite in terms of music. But if you're looking back, you're suddenly looking back at, like, that's probably why punk is dead. Okay, now you can alter a song, like my spiel about punk. Okay, Irish punk. Now, Irish punk is just, it's essentially like, it's saying, oh, I like this music from the 70s, and I like this music to develop through the 80s. I guess I'm going to use that. So, what's it called? Marketed. It's turned into such a music industry that it kind of loses its soul. I think punk lost its soul because once it gets really big, once punk gets so big, it kind of loses its point, right? It turns into the man. Within storytelling, and I'm going to jump back into this really quickly because it's frustrating to people listening, but within storytelling, you just look at a Christmas Carol. A Christmas Carol has been told 1,000 times, probably. I don't know, maybe not 1,000 times. It's been told at least 100 times in 100 different ways, but it still remains a Christmas. I say this is the main reason why I say they're kind of twins in the area of art. Okay, I'm just to cut myself short, and because I'm already over 30 minutes. I think these are special in the area of art, and I think they're really cool. And maybe I'll talk about it more in the future. This Connect Policy of the Week, and we've been doing red herrings. And if you don't know what a red herring is, or if you weren't listening last week, red herrings, because there's a lot of them, and I just want you to be aware of the different red herrings that can pop up when you are actually arguing or you're making a point. And it also helps you remember what a red herring is. So if you cannot remember from last week, a red herring is something in an argument that distracts you from the main point of the argument. It distracts you from the argument and points to something else. This week is chronological snobbery. And it's a thesis that is, someone says is incorrect, and they say it's incorrect because it was commonly held, the belief for the thesis was commonly held to be true as well. So this thesis was, oh, this is true, but then they say this is true as well. I think this happens a lot with people. I think when you look in the past and look at the ideas of someone in the past, their ideas aren't as good because, for instance, if you look at the Middle Ages, a lot of people before Columbus, they thought the earth was flat. And then there were other ideas. So let's just say that I'm going to use the Middle Ages as an example. The Middle Ages, they thought the earth was flat, or some people did. Not everybody thought the earth was flat because there were Greeks who knew the earth was round, okay? And they're like, oh, the earth is flat, and the Christian doctrine is correct. The Catholicism is true. It's truth, okay? And what it teaches is truth. I'm just using this as an example. But just because we found more information, we found, oh, the earth is actually round, we can actually go out into space and we can see that it's a sphere. It's not round, it's a sphere. Give me a break, people. It's a sphere. It doesn't necessarily mean that the beliefs of Catholicism aren't true. All right, just because they coincided doesn't mean they believe it doesn't mean that one is untrue. It doesn't mean those beliefs are untrue. You'd have to actually argue on the basis of you'd actually have to have a good argument to say, oh, this, and this. These are the reasons why it's not true. This is why it's logical, etc., and so on. You can't say, oh, well, at one point in time, the Catholic Church believed the Earth was flat. Therefore, all the rest of their beliefs are not true because they existed at the same time. Just because something is old doesn't mean it's wrong. That's essentially what chronological snobbery is. Just because it's old, it's wrong. That's what it is. Okay, I'm also getting a dry mouth. When you have a dry mouth, it's really, really hard to talk, and I've got a super dry mouth. I feel like I have a lisp. But I think I'm going to say this now because this has been on my mind. So one thing that's been on my mind recently is that if you create anything and you get too much feedback, it's just going to kill you. I actually have come to believe that you just shouldn't take feedback from fans. So and I don't have fans. Okay, I'm not saying I have fans. I'm not saying I have a following or anything like that. I'm just talking about just people who make art in general. First of all, you should stop when you're ahead. So like things like Star Wars should have been done after the first 3 were made. And I mean the first 3 in the 70s. Like no more should have been made. Because like somehow everything came together for that, and it made an iconic movie trilogy. So no, there shouldn't be any other Star Wars being made. They should have never marketed it the way they did because it made too much money. It became too big for itself. It should have just stayed those movies. But when you make something, and the reason why is because you see Star Wars and you see how the first one that came out, the newer one that came out, people liked it, but they didn't because it was derivative. It just took ideas from the old movies and it put them in there, and it just remade the old movie. And now the newer one, people are freaking out because it's completely different. Now, I think that if it's too much feedback, it's just going to destroy your art. Someone I know, and I've known him my whole life, but we don't keep in touch at all. Someone I know who does art doesn't show an art piece until it's finished. He will not show someone an art piece until it's finished. And I think this is really, really a really good idea, because you, as an artist, as someone who makes anything, I think you just have to go in your own little world, make your own thing. And if people don't like it, they don't like it. And there's probably, if you enjoy doing it, I think that it's a value to you and it teaches you something. And especially if it's something hard that you do that you enjoy. If it's something hard, you have to struggle to figure it out and struggle to create it. I think that's good. But if you have, there's always going to be somebody who doesn't like what you make. Now there's some things. Now when you come back to storytelling is hard. I think making a good story is hard. There's other things that are harder. I'm not saying I think that if you're an author, you probably if you're an author who's successful, if you have enough to make on, I think that's great. That's my dream job. I would love to be able to do that. But it's hard to make something that people like, I think. And some things with storytelling are objective, but if you just take people's ideas, if you write a book and you give it to someone and they say, "Oh, I don't like it," I think that it's something you shouldn't take it to heart. You should just be like, "Well, I wrote the book the way I wanted to." And that's just how it is. Like, I'm not going to change it. I think it's good. And when I finished the book, I thought it was good. And there's certain aspects, like if someone can't understand what you're writing or doesn't understand what you're trying to convey, I think you should change that. But you shouldn't kowtow to someone else's opinion or their own preferences for what you're making. So, someone's always going to hate what you do, and I think you should just get used to it. And if you can't get used to it, then you should get used to it. Just learn how to do it. So my name is Daniel Poppie. This is How to Write Good. I will see you next week, and in 2 weeks we will have our first guest, so that's exciting. All right, see you later.